Hello everyone, Mike here. Today I'm going to discuss metaphysics and religion. More specifically, I'm going to talk a little bit about two of the most famous arguments for the existence of God. The first is the difficult-sounding ontological argument. The second is the more spooky and interesting-sounding unmoved mover argument. Before we begin, let me quickly say something about the difference between a rational argument and an empirical argument. A rational argument begins in the mind. An empirical argument begins from the world around us, normally through the senses. This guy here, immortalized in stained glass, how great is that, is Anselm of Canterbury. He's from way back around 1078 CE. His argument began with a definition of God. His definition of God was that which nothing greater can be conceived. His argument in itself is pretty simple. If God exists in your mind, then God must exist in reality. The ink was barely dry on this argument when a contemporary of Anselm, named Gonilo, another monk, said this: "I can imagine an absolutely perfect island, perfect in every possible way. Does this idea of perfection make the island exist in actuality or not?" It is difficult to look back at these ancient times from our modern viewpoint. So let me just stress that disputes over these arguments for the existence of God were there from the beginning. It is not a modern invention to dispute these arguments. This imposing figure with the monk's tonsure, that's his haircut, if you're wondering, is St. Thomas Aquinas, to this day the official philosopher of the Catholic Church and an extremely influential theologian. He's going to give an argument quite different than Anselm. If you remember, Anselm began with a definition. Aquinas wants to begin with the senses by looking around the world and noticing that things are in motion. These things that are in motion cannot ultimately be in motion from just themselves. If you go back and back and back and back, something had to initially cause the motion. The ball is moving, the ball was kicked by a person, the person came from parents, the parents came from those parents. Where does it end? Aquinas wants to say an infinite regress is an impossible idea. So something must have been the first unmoved mover. Something that wasn't itself in movement. It was actual. It didn't need anything else to cause it. And then he wants to add, this is what we all call God. There are a couple of small gaps in Aquinas' argument. The first is that the idea of an infinite regress is impossible. He states this. His argument certainly does not prove it. The second is that even if his argument is correct, and there is an unmoved mover, it's quite a leap to call this unmoved mover God in a religious sense. And let me end by saying that I have vastly oversimplified these arguments to try to make them easier to begin with in a metaphysical study. All simplifications and errors are, of course, mine.